morning, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wanted a longer, healthier, happier life, then do we have the Telomere Effect show for you. Today, I'll be talking with Elissa Epel, University of California, San Francisco, psychiatry professor and the director of the Aging, Metabolism, and Emotions Lab, and the co-author of a brilliant new book, along with Dr. Elizabeth Blackburn, The Telomere Effect. And that's just what I want to talk with her about today, about living younger, healthier, longer, and happier. That, plus we'll talk about barrels of apples, wild European shag chicks, the importance of shoelaces, what we can all learn from pond scum, the danger of polar bears, George Costanza and Serenity Now, and, oh, gotcha, what in the world hot dogs has to do with anything. So welcome to the show, Elissa. Are you ready to shine?
I'm so excited. Thank you for having me, Michael. You've clearly read the most funny parts of the book and made them funnier.
Well, I absolutely love the book. We're going to cruise right through fairly quickly today, but I've got to ask before we dive right into things, what did you want to be growing up?
Oh, I thought I wanted to be a doctor until I learned more about what that was exactly about. And I was always interested in healing and the mind-body connection and the relationship between the doctor and the patient. So I chose something kind of in between. So I get to understand how the mind affects the body, how people can turn on their natural ability to heal. And so, everything I study is kind of, I think of as natural biohacks and safe ways that we can, hack in and try to just optimize our vitality and health.
So how did you get interested in biohacking, and did it have anything to do with the mothers of chronically sick children?
So that is a good question. I think that the idea that suffering and stress can get under the skin and trying to understand exactly how that happens, that was really consuming for at least a decade of understanding, what the actual biological pathway is. And then, of course, the more interesting question is reversing that. What can we do to actually thrive and live in this world that's always going to be full of stress and sometimes trauma and sometimes terrible things? And the human spirit just we go on and on and on, and we carry our body throughout our life. So how can we keep it together and even thrive and do well? So those are the questions that drive me.
Excellent. And so getting to telomeres, why do people age differently?
That is a mystery that hasn't been fully unpacked. So obviously genetics are a piece and lifestyle's a piece. And I think the piece that we tend to forget is the more invisible psychosocial world we live in, right? So our mindset and our relationships and kind of the social emotional tone of the environment that we live in every minute, every day, this is actually a big effect. We don't think of it as smoking, but something like feeling socially isolated has as big of an effect as smoking on our lifespan.
It's huge. And so since you mentioned lifespan, can you tell us what health span and disease span are?
Okay, so right now we could live to 100 given our mechanics of our body, right? But we tend to get sick starting after 50 or so, and then we spend years and years being sick, and that is living in the disease span, and that's unfortunately where the common scenario. And what we want to do, and we all know people like this, is to live a full long life with minimal disability and disease until the end, right? And then we've had a long health span and a condensed short disease span. The disease span is suffering. No one wants to live with disease. The truth is, when we get there, of course we choose life and we deal with it, but it's hard, and we can minimize and compress that period.
Excellent. So how did you meet your co-author, Liz?
So I was yes. So that was probably about 15 years ago. I was a postdoc here, and I was obsessed with understanding aging inside the body. Before we get disease, we're all aging at different rates. And so right under my nose was one of the world leaders in discovering a clock in the body, the telomere length. And so I emailed her and I knocked at her door and we had a meeting, and she was very, very interested in this. At the time, maybe, mysterious or black box idea that people under chronic stress might have shorter telomeres. But she was very open-minded, and we set out and did that first study over 10 years ago. And now there's a whole field of understanding how our lifestyle and different types of adversity and stress are affecting our telomeres and how we can reverse that. So yes, it did. Yeah, that's how that we met. So I was very lucky, and she's been a fabulous collaborator, even though she's a very famous Nobel laureate.
Awesome. And woohoo! So tell us a little bit more about telomeres, and specifically what is, and I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this even close, senescence and the Hayflick limit.
Yes, good questions. These are huge words that most people don't know of, but they're cool and important. So in every cell in our body, we've got these chromosomes that need the genes that make us who we are, that need protection. And at the very ends of the genes, we have these protective caps, telomeres. And I'm just going to show you this is, of course, trees looking like telomeres, but you can see that.
So raise that up just a little bit for people. Yep.
So these are chromosomes look like this. And at the tips, we have these protective caps, and they're long and stable, and they protect us from all the chemicals that enter our cell and try to wreak havoc.
Like shoelace caps.
Like shoelace caps. And then they wear out as the seasons go on, and they get shorter. And when the telomeres get too short, the cell can no longer divide. So it's kind of like a clock. We want our cells to divide. We want to replenish tissue. We need certain parts of our body to renew. And so we want to keep our telomeres stable so our cells can keep renewing. And when the telomere gets too short and they can't renew, that's an aged cell we call senescent. And we don't want a lot of senescent cells in our body, because those actually turn into little machines that create inflammation. And aging is about this rise in inflammation over the years. So we want to keep inflammation down, and keeping good sturdy telomeres is kind of critical to that.
Excellent. And I was very surprised by this, and we're in baby planning mode here. My wife Jessica, she's the producer, and myself, and we are fascinated by this one and a little aghast. And the good news is there's something we can do about it, or everybody can. But can childhood affect our telomere length?
Childhood is a very critical period, vulnerable period, and yes, so early, what we call early childhood adversity, just big things that happen to kids like abuse, neglect, violence, bullying, seeing bullying in the home. That most people, about 30% of people, have at least one of these harsh circumstances. And the more of those you have, the shorter your telomeres are, even as an adult. And the good news is that you can just think of that as past you can't control, and starting from right now, day to day, everything you do can actually improve and help stabilize your telomeres. So I think that if you're one of those people who's had a lot of wear and tear, you probably don't need to be obsessive about what's my length right now, I'm going to go get them measured, but just do the things that you know are most important for you today. So that's different for each person. If you're a smoker, of course, that's a really important thing to try to manage. If you're sedentary, telomeres don't like being sedentary. So like sitting all day and then just exercising a little turns out to be not quite enough. We need to just be moving around a lot. Telomeres like action. They like love. They like long-term relationships. They like fruits and vegetables.
Very, very good. And for that individual who says, I've got to go get my telomere length checked out, that's like the person who obsesses over their diet, which is actually probably worse than if they took up smoking.
So, I mean, certainly that pattern of worrying and being a ruminator has a biological effect, right? We're kind of obsessed with studying that, because that in the end comes down to what stress is. That's how we keep it alive in the body. It's not that things are always happening, but that we're always kind of churning it up and keeping it alive. So we often, one of the best ways to deal with that kind of overly busy, worried, neurotic mind is mindfulness training, so that we can look inside and help manage those thoughts. They're not going to go away, but they don't stress us out as much when we're trained in actually viewing things and with mindfulness. So yeah, testing your telomeres, I'm agnostic about it. If you really want to know, you can, but don't take it too seriously. There's error in the test, and you'd want to do repeated testing if you wanted to be sure about your value.
Thank you. And we're going to get into all of the how-tos here in a few minutes, but I've got to ask, what do hairy Muppet-like pond scum have to do with anything?
So some of the most fundamental and basic discoveries, they can't be made in in complex humans. We can't manipulate and experiment on us, but in these pond scum, these tetrahydromena, these are the organism that Liz studied first when she was looking at trying to understand telomeres. And what she saw in the pond scum is that that when the telomeres got too short, the single-celled organism died. And then she and her graduate student, Carol Greider, actually, they knew there was an enzyme controlling the length of the telomere. They found it. They discovered it. They named it telomerase, and they manipulated it. So when they increased the telomerase, the tetrahydromena lived forever. It became immortalized. And that's beautiful. And I wish aging was so simple in us. We could just take telomerase and live forever. But of course, there's the flip side, which is when our cells go on and replicate, we are prone to cancer. And so there's this kind of fine balance between let cells get old, and so they're not, dividing too much and staying around too long. But so we kind of want to have long telomeres, but not too long, and high telomerase, but not too high, because then we kind of flip the risks toward cancer.
Thank you. And so my wife, she was asking me, so what do you think of telomerase supplements?
Well, none of us know too much about those. People take them. They're expensive, and they haven't been studied independently. What I mean by that is they've been studied by the companies who sell them. And so we really do need studies that look at their safety in a long-term way, like more than a year. So we just don't know about those.
Makes sense. So let's talk about this idea that we can change the way we age at a most elemental cellular level. And maybe we start with the basics. And I love how you both titled this in your book, Your Cells Are Listening to Your Thoughts.
What do you think?
I
Could
think,
it be true?
Well, I think we have trillions of organisms in us, and I think they're each little sentient beings, and we need to take as great care of them as we can. And when the waves of emotion come over us in life, we have to let go of that and realize we are not the waves, we are the ocean, and then treat them with as much love as we possibly can.
I can't beat that. That's beautiful.
Now, putting that into practice, that's why there's books like this.
So we do know that a lot of the chemical messengers that we control are shaping telomere length, are bolstering it or shortening it. Inflammation, stress hormones, too much insulin and glucose, and free radicals, the oxidative stress that's we need some to live, but we don't want to have too much oxidative stress. So those are all of those chemicals are bounced around based on what we do every day. So when we get, for example, if we're eating a rainbow of fruits and vegetables, that is going to manage all of that extra oxidative stress and reduce it. It has this antioxidant effect and anti-inflammatory. So that's the medicine. We don't have safe drugs to reduce the free radicals and the inflammation, but we can eat the drugs in a sense. We can eat whole foods.
I like it. And we get to eat our thoughts too, although that sounds really bad. But let's talk about stress. How much is too much? And if there's such a thing even as good stress for the telomeres.
Well, tell me about what you think. Like, what's stress like in your life? Good stress, bad stress, chronic stress, toxic stress?
I'm an interesting one because we do a show every single day, which means that every day I read a full book. Every day I have to do a book report live in a sense before could be 100,000 or more people worldwide. So every day I have, in a sense, a lot of stress, but I actually enjoy it. I feel enriched by it. I am engaged. I am passionate. I am focused. And I know that I do what Dr. Srini Pillay out of Harvard calls the Tinkerer Doodle try. I get in and I dive deep and I go run and play. I get in and dive deep and then I step back and I exercise not too vigorously, but 2.5 hours or more each and every day, standing desk, wobble stool. So I like the stress. I'm not wishing it on anybody, but I know if I go in and get out, that it's sort of like doing yoga of tightening, constricting, and relaxing. It could actually be beneficial if I do all my homework, I do my meditation, I drop down, I'm watching my mind, and I'm continuously cultivating my mind, trimming the weeds, and bringing it back to center. And breathing.
Michael, yes. You are the prototype, the exemplar of positive stress. I love it. Now, not everyone could live your life, right? So there's a lot of personality involved in this, but everyone can tune up their mindset so that they're having more positive stress responses and that they're approaching things with that attitude that you have of that kind of engagement and opportunity for gain and building that stress muscle. So what I like to think of is how we want to have, instead of just like, oh, we need to relax and meditate and just keep our arousal low, we want to be having this up and quick recovery and a quick peak and then a quick recovery and restoration. And so what you described is really, an ideal day where you're having periods of restoration, you're having periods of, intense positive stress. And what fun. Sounds like an amazing day. It may be exhausting, but do you get enough sleep?
Oh, yes. I'm going to sleep more than 7 hours, 7.5 to 8 hours every single night. Then I get up and I meditate and I do a process we teach called automatic writing. It's in a sense, a journaling process, getting it all out, learning from myself, learning from my higher self, and do a lot of this hygiene. And like you talk about in the book, I'm very careful, but not neurotic, about inflammatory factors. I don't eat sugar, for instance. Because I'm on the gas pedal a lot, I'm sensitive. I've maybe trained myself to be sensitive to what things do to you. And so then I've pulled them out. If I have sugar, it's a quick burst of energy. I'm saying burst in question mark because my belly feels it now. But then you crash. And in my life, I don't have time or the desire for the crash.
Wow. So I think we are all prone to these negative effects of sugar, but they're just, for so many people, they're not visible, tangible, felt experiences. And that's the problem, right? We're just, because we're in a kind of chaotic, high stress day, that we're not even noticing how, that withdrawal and how bad it's making us feel. And it is true, the people who notice and can feel that up and down, they are much more successful at eliminating it.
So let's go back. Thank you. Let's go back to what's interesting is how you were describing your day, my day. I never equated it, but it actually sounds like heart rate variability. And you, because that's the same thing. You want the ability to change that beat in a moment to moment basis. And so maybe you can tell us about the challenge response and how I can actually develop that for ourselves.
Well, what do you say to yourself when you are about to start an interview with someone you don't know? Is maybe a challenging topic? What are your thoughts?
Typically, those are my best. Typically, the interviews where I go in with a fluttering belly, which I realize is just me about to surf a wave, which is cool. The interviews where the unknown is greater than the known, something magical is going to come out of it if I step back, get out of myself, and simply allow the wave to come and surf that wave. So I know now to get excited about it. Do I still get nervous? Absolutely. Am I still jittery and fluttery? Absolutely. Am I totally okay with it and going, Jessica, I'm going to go make a new friend. Woohoo! You betcha.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. Okay. So what you described about this wave is a beautiful metaphor for how we can experience stressors. So what we try to do is we know it's going to come. We might even wake up with anticipation and we mobilize all this extra cortisol, and our autonomic nervous system is just vigilant, right? Because we are worrying and anticipating, either consciously or unconsciously. And the solution to that is to let experiences come to us and let them unfold in the moment. And that was that wave that you just described, and then surfing it once you're in it. And that's beautiful. So I think, one part of mindfulness training is teaching people to actually, when they can, to be present and calm. And then as things are unfolding, to be engaged, but not to try to meet things before they happen, because we can't control things. We don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, and I like how you describe in the book that you're talking about athletes, and an athlete's going, I've got my heart jumping out of my chest before a race. And in the book, the question is asked, well, do you really want to stop your heart? This is actually, I like to say, anxiety, stress and anxiety is actually energy without deliberate motion. Once you step forward into motion and excitement without deliberate motion, once you step forward into motion and deliberate in the direction you want to go, then that energy actually becomes a fuel for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. And that is, this engagement that we're talking about, and the, being in motion is a really pleasant, beautiful, positive experience. Some people call it flow, but when we're really focused on one thing, so we're not having sensory strain and trying to multitask, we're actually fully engaged. That's actually, a state of happiness in a sense. And we think of, our mind is more than half the time not present and either past, future, or trying to multitask. And that is, even though that's kind of our default mode, that's stressful. That's a tax. That's cognitive load. And so the more we can really let ourselves focus on one thing at a time and really engage and be, as you say, in motion, that's really a wonderful way to live.
It's interesting. I did a long time ago a 5,000-mile, 40-day solo unsupported bike ride across the country. It was for people with learning disabilities and ADHD. And that, to me, that level of focus and concentration, because I had to pedal my tail off for 40 days, was actually easier than many other things in life. And I just made that connection because you were talking about in the book mind wandering and the load that puts on our system.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And, it's natural to mind wander, and a lot of it's positive and fantasizing. But when it is what we call negative mind wandering, wishing that you were somewhere else, wishing you were doing something else, that is unhappiness. That is what we call rejecting your experience. And that is what we're finding is related to shorter telomeres. So it's not just stress and depression, but actually that when we're not present for our own life. So another way of thinking about this, and maybe this is a little bit of a stretch, but when we are present and focused, we're timeless, right? We're no longer, we're actually extending our subjective experience of time. Yeah. And so our body's listening to that and likes that. And so it's how we experience time subjectively that is going to be tied to our aging. So if we are mindless and stressed, our clock is faster. When we're present and engaged, our clock is slower.
So all of this training we've gone through in our early years of life of I need to get through class faster, I want to get through line faster, I want to get through my job faster, is actually not serving us.
So I completely agree. And I think that part of what's hard is it is our culture. And so everyone around us is rushing and is trying to do more. And it's very hard to, to really see and live the paradox that doing less is more, and it is more time, and it is more pleasure and experience.
So thank you. How do we work with, and I was fascinated by this, how telomeres are affected by negative thinking. So how do we switch from negative thinking to resilient thinking?
I'm going to tell you two things about that. One is that, so we do know that feeling kind of hostile and mistrustful of other people, that hostility mindset, as well as glasses half full, the pessimism mindset, those are the two personality traits that have been associated with shorter telomeres. And the thing about personality is that we're not going to change into a different category. We're not going to, if we tend to be pessimists, we're not going to turn into an optimist. But what we can do is have awareness of our style and have some lightness. You just got to be humorous about it, because it's like we can't control our thoughts, but we can actually notice that they're thoughts, notice that they're there, and not believe them. And so when we think a pessimistic thought, we can laugh at it. So like my son is a defensive pessimist. And when we're approaching a store he wants to go to, he'll say, it's closed, I'm sure it's closed. And so, and then we just laugh and laugh at the style that we know is just a way, an automatic way of being. And, I think that's part of also mindfulness training, when you realize that you're having these styles that keep coming back. It's just the nature of the mind, and everyone has their own style. So pessimists and people with hostility, they can take the quizzes in our book, they can take them online, and know your style and notice it, and then don't let it, then it doesn't actually embed itself biologically and stress you out, because you may still have those thoughts, but then you don't believe them, and then you find the humor in them.
Well, it's something you talk about in another portion of the book, but it makes sense here. You can distance yourself. You no longer have to take ownership of them.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, distancing is interesting, and that works for some people. And so, when you're, for example, in the thick of something, we all get stressed out by little things every day, and sometimes big things. And so distancing, perspective taking, is realizing that there is an ephemerality to everything. Even an emotion is going to pass if we don't try to keep replaying it. And so, just asking yourself, is this situation right now, this email that's upsetting me, or this thing that didn't happen that I wanted to, is this going to affect you in a year? And the answer is usually no. And it's just a way of getting that perspective on life, so that we're not kind of having these ups and downs with the small things.
Thank you. What's the importance of self-compassion?
Most people are too self-critical, at least in the US. This is kind of a default mindset. And so, especially people with early adversity. And so having these internalized negative thoughts and voices are really hampering us, and they're not helping us. We might think that it's a way of, at this point in adulthood, it's usually just a habit. And so being able to actually realize that this type of suffering that we're creating with our thoughts is holding us back, it's making us less effective in the world, it's not helping us be a better person, it's a phenomenal skill that people are starting to learn, and it's helping so many people. So the self-compassion break developed by Kristen Neff is really just 3 steps, which is noticing when you're suffering and just acknowledging it. This is a moment of pain. This hurts. This sucks. Saying something to actually let yourself feel it and acknowledge it. And then reminding yourself that everyone suffers. This is the human condition. This is common humanity. And you're not alone. And that's something, we all think we're alone, and that our mind works differently. And of course, that's just an illusion. And then it's actually applying the self-compassion. And that just is a statement. People need to find what is it for themselves that will help them with pain. And so touching yourself your heart, or in some way giving yourself a hug and saying to yourself, may I be kind to myself. May I let this suffering pass. So the statement is going to be different for everyone, but you play around until it feels good. And I think that the data is just in how the supporting this is, yes, there's some research on it, but just the way that this kind of self-compassion break and the self-compassion classes have taken off just tells us a lot of people are really in pain with their own self, beating themselves up.
Yeah. And I was one of them myself. That was part of the wiring that I got to work on, and been huge. Took a long time at first. It was actually backlash. The ego going, oh, wait a second. I know where you're going with this one. In terms of breaks, you mentioned that as a break. Can you tell us about the 3-minute breathing break?
And let me just add, with the self-compassion, the other piece is, it's easier for people to do things for others than themselves. And so one thing that's kind of a motivator is to remind yourself that if you can't look into your own thoughts and be compassionate with yourself, it's also hard to be compassionate to others. And so, it can start from within and radiate outward. And that is, that's what everyone wants. So
Woo-hoo!
Inside, even if they're not aware of it. So sorry, you asked about
3-minute breathing break.
Right. So this is another, I'm not going to say a quick fix, but a daily practice for people. It's a mini meditation, and it consists of 3 steps, which is focusing on the breath, checking in on the thoughts and feelings. So just asking yourself, what are my thoughts and feelings right now? And then that focus in on breathing takes us away from the self-focus on negative thoughts. It changes brain activity. It chops up rumination. It makes this kind of habit we have of negative thoughts and feelings to be sticky and to spiral. It just actually lets them go. It releases the glue. And so that can be a helpful habit to try to do this 3-minute breathing break. And it's just a small meditation. It's particularly helpful for people with depression.
Thank you. Is there another telomere hack having to do with our emotions that you'd recommend?
I think it's so individual that people need to find what they like. There's so many different mind-body activities that people can do. I really believe that morning's a special time. People can wake up and do a practice right then. And that could be in bed, and it could be just in your head. It could be gratitude, looking forward to the day. We are finding that people who wake up with joy have a much healthier, I guess, we talk about adrenal activity. So their cortisol is this nice curve up and a quick recovery instead of a more exaggerated over secretion of this stress hormone. And so that's beautiful that some people wake up naturally with joy, but we don't all do that. Many of us wake up with worry and thinking about dreading something or just meeting the demands, grabbing our phone and then being bombarded by things. But we can control those first 5 minutes of waking up, even if we're super busy, and create and set the tone for a joyful day. And gratitude is a great way to get there.
Woohoo! Real brief.
I got a point there, right?
you got several good points there. So
what do you do when you wake up?
It's actually, we have a routine, a program we're going to be coming out. It's like, how do I put this? Thank you for the tie-in. We're going to be releasing a program in a month called our Magical Morning Routine for Spiritual Seekers. And the routine differs for everybody, but my routine is I get up and in my head, quietly, because my wife is still sleeping, I do 10 woohoos. Woohoo! Woohoo! I get myself going there. I may think about a few things to be grateful for. I go up to my computer, I turn it on with I use an app called Flux so that I have the screen that's black and red. It's darkroom mode. So it's nice and dim. I'll write down my dream if I had a recent dream. Then I may actually do a little dream analysis. Then I sit and go quiet for about 10 to 20 minutes. Put on some headphones at that point with some binaural theta brain entrainment music. And then I do my automatic writing, asking what do I need to know? What can I learn from this day? What can I learn about myself? I go into this space. Then from there, I do a little bit of manifestation work. I call it my Woohoo 8. I look at what my single-minded purpose is for the day. I get that done. I step back, notice no email, no check-in with the external world yet. I'm going to go get some food, and I'm going to kick myself out of the house to the gym or to go exercise.
Yeah.
Then, only then, once I come back, do I touch base with, because I don't want to give my time away and my energy away. It's too precious to me.
Yeah. Yeah. So you really live that idea that morning is this precious time to reset and energize in all these ways, intention setting. And I think even just doing one or two of those can make a difference and can really change someone's trajectory. So I do on a good morning, yoga or meditation or both. And then I've been playing with this Wim Hof breathing. Mm-hmm. And so this is kind of this, hyperventilation and then retention and cycles of that. And what it's doing is this positive stress. We're talking about positive psychological stress, positive physical stress, like exercise and, particularly intermittent, is also something that conditions the body. And so we're going to study this Wim Hof method. We don't know if it's going to cause too much stress or actually maybe even tune up aging cells and lengthen telomeres. You never know. So we're looking into that. We're just going to start a study soon.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. I can't wait to hear about it because Wim Hof is into some of the same stuff. Years ago, my wife and I wrote the bestseller Barefoot Running. And if you Google barefoot running in the snow and look at videos, we probably still have the #1 video of us practicing our own breathing method, heating up our bodies, and go running in a couple feet of snow.
It's amazing. And it's just such a good demonstration that even for something that we think of as the automatic nervous system that we can't control, we do have some control.
Absolutely. Woohoo! Yeah. So, all right, where can people go to find out more, to find your beautiful book? And I hear you have an event coming up on April 20th as well.
So if people Google 1440 or Multiversity, this is the retreat center in Santa Cruz. And my name, which is Epel, E-P-E-L, they'll find the event. So it's Elissa Epel and Dan Siegel at 1440. And my website is amecenter.ucsf.edu. So AME stands for Aging, Metabolism, Emotions, this kind of triad that all work together. amecenter.ucsf.edu. For people hearing this fresh, I am co-leading a 2-day weekend retreat with the amazing Dan Siegel, who teaches Mindsight and the Wheel of Awareness, and it's on stress resilience. So it's for anyone who needs to rejuvenate and reboot, but especially people who are feeling like they're burnt out and they need to learn some skills for that daily rejuvenation we've been talking about. Caregivers, people in the helping professions, etc. I love retreats. I just came back from actually a silent retreat, which is totally different animal, right? You don't do
like Vipassana or
but I like to, even getting away for a weekend gives people an opportunity to practice something new in this kind of restorative, safe environment. We study retreats and we also see how much dramatic change people can have in their well-being and their gene expression, within days to weeks. And we actually have a new paper by my colleagues, Cliff Sarin and Quinn Conklin, showing that 3 weeks of a Vipassana retreat is associated with sturdier telomeres. And they lengthened. We don't know if they truly lengthened in real life, but at least with the measurements that we are able to make, it looks like they actually even lengthened over 3 weeks.
Fantastic. And if you didn't catch amecenter.ucsf.edu, come on over to inspirenationshow.com and we'll get you over to amecenter.ucsf.edu. So I'm going to recommend everybody get the book. We didn't get into diet, into lifestyle changes, into your environment and the people around you, exercise. There's so much more in this book. Before I let you go, what one homework assignment would you give people today to begin working on their own telomeres?
I think you can step back from your life, do a quick scan, a quick survey, and what it is that is maybe an obstacle for you or getting you down the most. So it might be not getting enough sleep. It might be a stressful situation at work or in a relationship. It might be your diet. So for each person, it's different. And so in the book, we kind of give a little quiz of, what is it for you that is your number one telomere shortening thing in your day? And I think obviously everyone already knows, exercise is probably one of the most important things for anti-aging, but it also is particularly important if you're under a lot of stress. So we find that people under a lot of stress, they do tend to have faster telomere shortening, but not if they're active. And so the exercise breaks up all of those stress hormones and free radicals.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Elissa. This has
Thank
been
you.
a true pleasure and a treat.
Oh, for me too. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome. So, for everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, get the telomere effect, and begin protecting your telomeres today, and shine bright. Woohoo! Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much.
I have elation right now. You're amazing what you emanate. Thank you.
Thank you. It goes both ways. It so goes both ways. Thank you for taking the time. I know we kept you over a little bit. It was a pure pleasure. You're so much fun and so interesting and such a good, inspiring, embodied person. Wow. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like below. Also, leave your comments. Have some real fun with it. Subscribe to our channel where you're going to get more great videos, more interviews coming up. And check out our website, inspirenationshow.com. That's where you'll find tips, blogs, information, videos you won't find anywhere else, and useful and helpful resources to really help you kickstart your life and to shine bright. Thanks so much again. Thank you for your support. Like, comment, subscribe. See the website. Thanks so much and have fun. Of course, shine bright. Woohoo!